Hey everyone, Dom Emoticon here, your friendly audio guy. Welcome to Ask the Influencer. On this episode, I am very honored and privileged to have John Walker, also known as Kutski. John, thank you for being here today, man. How are you feeling?
All good, mate. All good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. No, thank you again for coming on, man. How's your day been today? You been busy this morning or taking it easy?
I'm not really so much of a morning person, to be honest. It's like the day starts around midday for me, and we've just hit 12 o'clock, so this is officially me starting work. But it's like kind of even I've tried getting up at like 8 o'clock in the morning and going straight into the studio, and I just sit there blurry-eyed and nothing gets done. So I've hit my stride of getting up at about 8 o'clock in the morning, but I'll get up, I'll get a coffee, I'll go out for a walk, I'll come back, I'll get some breakfast, get showered, get ready, tidy the apartment, do any little bits of paperwork that's got to be done, and then it's like, and I feel like at that moment when I hit midday, it's like, I'm ready to fire on all cylinders in the studio.
Right, so you're a man of routine. That's good. I guess that's the reason why you're so successful and you've been doing this for so long, eh?
Yeah, apparently so. It's like sometimes I do wonder, because it's like, I feel like I'm split on that, where part of the time it's like I like the routine of having the same thing to do all the time, but then I also like the fact that the routine gets broken. Like, on weekends when you're out touring, it's something different. So I like doing the same things and having my format laid out, but I don't like doing the same thing every day. So I'm kind of weird like.
Yeah, we need a bit of variety, hey?
Yeah.
So for everyone tuning in for the first time, Ask the Influencer, this show's all about the origin story of every guest that we have on the show, and also just to give you all the personal perspective of their journey, how they've come to this point in their career, and just to get to know them a little bit better, maybe some of their interests and just personal details that you guys might be curious about. So going straight into it, Kutski, tell me, how did it all begin for you? Tell me the earliest days when you felt music came into your life, and then maybe tell me, how did Kutski itself come around?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved music since I was a kid. I mean, it's almost like an irony now. Like what my mum always says when I was little, that I just used to terrorize her by breaking record players that she had in the house, because I grew up as an 80s kid and stuff. And I was like, I still have this like memory. Like my mum had this record player, and it was one that played sideways. Like you put the record on sideways and you screwed it on with like a bolt. And it's like, and I used to be fascinated by it, and I don't really know why or anything, but I used to have like this nightmare that I'd be looking at it and it'd just switch on its own. And I was like kind of terrified by it, but like obsessed with looking at it. And I'd always make my mum put it on, and she said I was always trying to mess with it and turn the dials and stuff like that. So that was like literally from when I was like 3 years old. So it's like it's kind of almost ironic that now I'm like 37 and I've made a career from like playing with record players. I had an obsession since I was little. But I mean, for me, like my first real love for music started when I was about 8 years old, I'd say, something like that, because I had an older sister that was into a lot of rave music, like Prodigy, SL2, Alternate, all of that sort of stuff. So when you've got like an older sibling that's into cooler music than you, it's like I used to steal her Prodigy tapes and stuff like that. And I was obviously way too young to be going to parties at that age, so my experience of the rave scene from that era was me taking a stereo, like literally stealing a tape from my sister, stealing batteries from my mum and dad's appliances around the house, and taking the radio to the park and listening to Prodigy while playing football with my friends. So that was kind of like the entry level, really. And then kind of, as time moved on, I got into all different types of music. I got into a lot of like, kind of like, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, kind of really diverse range of music. And then I think I must have been about 11 years old when one of my friends, maybe a little bit older, one of my friends came around to my house and he goes, I just bought a new CD, check it out. It's called Bonkers, which is obviously the infamous Happy Hardcore CD series mixed by like Hixie and Sharky. And I remember he put on the Hixie mix, and the first like 10 seconds of it, it starts off quite slow, and all of a sudden it goes like super fast. And there was just like that light bulb moment. And the only way that I can kind of describe, like when I first heard Happy Hardcore, it was like having sugar injected to your veins, because at that age, it's high energy, it's happy, it's energetic, it's got vocals, it's catchy, and it's just this like intense. It's just exactly what I wanted with music that I never knew that I wanted until I heard it. And then when I looked into that scene more, it kind of, I found out that had spawned, the Happy Hardcore scene had spawned from the rave music that I was listening to 3 or 4 years earlier. Kind of like that, early 90s breakbeat rave, and then become Happy Hardcore by like 1995, around that era. And whenever I was listening to indie music, it's, I had like a guitar that I tried to strum along with. And, when I was listening to rave music earlier, it's like I'd like a little Casio keyboard that I couldn't do anything really with. And it was the light bulb moment for me starting as Kutski, a DJ, was kind of when I was listening to the Bonkers CD. I didn't really understand. I definitely didn't know anything about the culture of DJing, with anything to do with it. And it was just weird that I was listening to this CD and it didn't start and stop in between tracks. It was just like, if you just listen to it, it was just like a 80-minute track that just continuously went from one part to the next to the next. And it was this like one massive evolving track. But there's a track list on the back and I didn't really understand. And then as I, kind of like looked a little bit more, heard more stuff. And then I started to understand also these are all individual tracks and it's the DJ's job to mix these together. So being an unsuccessful pianist and an unsuccessful guitarist, I'm thinking, well, if it's just playing records, I can kind of get down with this. So yes, I had like a paper round at the time, and I'd just saved up my money to buy a single. I always like to say I bought a Technics deck first. It was a Technics turntable, but it was like a Technics hi-fi turntable from the second-hand shop that cost me like £30. And I had like a portable CD player, a Discman, at the time, and I used to use my dad's PC speaker that had a fade between the two inputs, and I used to plug the turntable into one side, the Discman into the other, and I just used to literally just fade between tracks on there and just like DIY. I'm doing exactly what every other DJ's doing. I've got it sussed here. So yeah, that was like the kind of the early moments for me when I was like really getting into it. And then obviously from then it's like you learn a little bit more, you get a little bit more wise to the game, stuff like that. When I left school, I got a day job as an apprenticeship, no real intention of making a career because I was working in civil engineering, designing roads, but I had no real career aspirations. At that point, it's like, left school at 16, it's like, and I was just getting money. At that point, I could afford actual real Technics turntables. Then I was figured out what that pitch control on the side was for. Oh, you can beat match inputs to get them at the same speed. That's why when I'm doing it, it sounds like a train wreck. And when everyone else is doing it, it was this seamless thing. So then pieces of the puzzle started to come together. And I guess that was, kind of like the birth of Kutski long before, kind of I ever touched a turntable in a nightclub.
Yeah, right. What an origin story, man. Good on you for just jumping in at such a young age. Hey, getting like, creative, getting a bit of engineering.
I thought that I knew that I was doing, really. It was just like, I'm sure you kind of, there's, different people have different interests. I always like to think that it's like, I hate it when people say, well, I'm flattered when people say, oh, you're so talented, because I'm really not. Everything I've done, it's just kind of it's hard work, but not like hard work and dedication like I've really grafted. I mean, I have grafted over the years, but it's just like a fascination and an interest. It's like, anything that I like, I've become kind of like obsessive compulsive about, and I just want to take part and I want to learn more about it. And it's more like just that obsessive compulsive behavior that's in me that's led me to do what I want. And, kind of, if you sit me down with a book and help me to learn something, I've never been academic like that. But it's like, if I genuinely take an interest in something, it's like you try and stop me learning it. It's, it's weird how my brain seems to work.
Yeah. So you're going to go all out, go hard, man. That's why you're doing the harder styles.
Well, yeah, go to the extremes, isn't it?
Totally. No, cool. So on the topic of, I guess, the origins of Kutski, I've got a comment from one of the fans here. His name's Steven, or Stave, and he goes, Kutski, how'd you get your name, mate? He's heard that it means vagina in Dutch. Please elaborate.
Yeah, it's kind of quite funny, the story how that was first discovered. I was playing at a club on the south coast of England. This must have been like early 2000s. It was a hard trance DJ at the time called Tommy Pulse from Holland. And it's like I knew all his records, but I'd never met him. And he was playing at the party too, and he was playing before me. So I'd rocked down to the club, just got into the thing, put my DJ bag behind there. He turned around, saw me, obviously realised I was the guy that was playing after him. So he turns around and goes, oh, you're Kutski, aren't you? I was like, yeah, nice to meet you, Tommy Pulse, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, hey, man, you know what your name means in Dutch? I'm like, oh, no, this isn't going to be good news. And just the grin that he had on his face told me that this wasn't going to be something that it was going to be good. And he was like, yeah, it means like the ladies. And I'm like, oh, it's okay, Tommy. I get where you're going with this one. And it's actually it's kind of, it does actually mean female genitalia, but that's cut, K-U-T, and it's not a polite way of saying it. And people use it as an insult for something that's actually really bad as well. Like, you know, so if you really don't like something or it's terrible, you'd say it's, you know, it's cut. So yeah, that most fits my musical style. So yeah, yeah. And I remember it's like when I first started playing gigs in Holland, it's like I still hate it to this day. When you go and check into the hotel and it's like going to go to the desk and they're like, you know, hi, you know, kind of, you know, welcome to the hotel. And they're like, yeah, hi, I'm staying just one night tonight, please. Yeah, the room will be booked under John Walker. And my worst fear is when they look through and they go, would it have been booked under a different name? Because we can't see John Walker in the system. And I know I'm going to have to say Kutski, and they're going to go, whoa. It's usually like kind of like a really young, pretty girl or something. I've got to say that. And it's like, I just have to keep a poker face and pretend I'm British. I don't know what that means in Dutch. And you can see I'm trying to keep a straight face and not say, but yeah, so it's kind of like that. That's haunted me for a little while. But there again is if you're going to make extreme dance music in Holland, then maybe it's a really cool name.
That's it, exactly. And, you know, on the topic of names, I guess names, you know, they don't really matter so much anymore. Hey, I mean, what are your thoughts on names these days?
No, I mean, the way that my name came about, I mean, sometimes I look at it and I go Kutski, and then, you know, when you see all the other, like, you know, the modern cool names, because obviously I've been around for time now, and it's like, and when you look at the modern cool names, I'm thinking mine looks so kind of like old school, like, you know, kind of like 90s, but that's when I came up with it, because I originally, like I said, I got into, you know, happy hardcore in the 90s, and I really loved all the DJs that were scratching. That was what appealed to me more than mixing. It was the scratching side of things. DJs like Hixie on the Bonkers CD did a lot of scratching. Psy, DJ Hype, the drum and bass guy. So they were the guys that I listened to. And once I randomly turned onto MTV and I saw the DMC World Championship, for those who don't know, that's almost like, it's like the Olympics of DJing, where like each DJ gets a 6-minute slot and you've got to do as much crazy technical stuff as you can. So, you know, when you see people like spinning around 2 copies of the same record and beat juggling, scratching, and back then, you know, people jumping, doing handstands on the turntables while scratching, doing all this crazy stuff. And I was just like watching it. I was like, oh wow, okay. I thought like scratch DJs in happy hardcore and drum and bass were the ultimate. I was like, this is taking it to the next level. So from following a lot of what was going on with the DMC, I learned a lot about hip-hop DJing, because that's where that style of DJing comes from. And a lot of the DJs that were called like Mixmaster Mike, which was the DJ from the Beastie Boys, and Cutmaster Swift, that was a British guy that won DMC in 1991, I think, one of the early ones. And it's like, so I used to love that guy. So I used to call myself Cutmaster J for John. Like, and then because Cutmaster Swift spelt his with a C, I was like, I need to differentiate myself just that little bit more. So I'll go Cutmaster with a K. Nobody will realise it's all good. And then I'm playing in a little local bar that I did on a Thursday night in my hometown of Chester, which was basically Sunday nights were dead there. So they let all the local DJs just rock up and, you know, kind of play records. They'd bring their friends with them that drink at the bar. It was a tidy little way of them turning over a bit of money on a dead night. So I used to go down there and play with my friends, and we used to think we were all like superstar DJs because we had a gig, even though we weren't getting paid, and we were effectively just like selling beer for free. Right. So, yeah, and then so I played there, and there was an actual local promoter that was in the bar that night, and he said, he was like, you're actually really good and I want to book you at my event. He was like, what's your DJ name? And went to take my number. So I'm like, yeah, it's Cutmaster J. And he's got like an old Nokia 5210 phone that you can only fit a couple of characters in. Like, Cutmaster J ain't fitting in his phone. So he just puts Kutski in for short, and it takes my number, books me at the party. So like, then the flyer comes out for the party, but he put Kutski, not Cutmaster J. And I'm thinking this, and now I've finally got my name in print. I'm thinking this is like the peak of my career. It's never going to get any bigger than this. So we're going to have to stick with Kutski at this point. So I kind of like just inherited the name in that way. But yeah, I mean, back to your point, it's kind of like, you know, you look at it and it's like, you know, Kutski, I suppose if you'd never heard the DJ name before and I'm checking into a hotel in Holland, you go, what, you know, it's like a crazy name, like doesn't really mean anything, or maybe it sounds a bit stupid. But I think that all DJ names kind of lose context after a while. I mean, a lot of DJs, you know, from the 90s, they're kind of like, you know, if you actually break down what their DJ name is, they kind of look, it's just like, it doesn't even make sense. But once you hear that name, you associate that with the artist.
Exactly.
Like, you know, like I was mentioning bands before, Pearl Jam. If I say Pearl Jam, you think of Pearl Jam, the band. But you don't think Pearl Jam.
No.
Like, you don't ever break down the name. No, so in a way, I think, you know, kind of like DJ names are irrelevant. You can have whatever name you want. And even if people look at it for a little while and think that that's a bit crazy, it'll start to lose context. Like, do you remember when the iPad first came out?
Yeah,
And everyone
absolutely.
was laughing in America because they
Yeah.
said it sounded like a feminine hygiene product. And everyone's like, they can't call it that. They can't call it that.
Yeah.
I guarantee you now, you can't say iPad to anybody and they won't laugh because everyone will just think an iPad. Yeah, that big iPhone.
That's it.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like everything loses context over time, and you just kind of you get new associations for the word. So I guess now with DJ names, the most important thing is to make sure that you can get the social media tags and you can get the URL for your website.
Yeah, that's it. Now you want a name that just stands out. You know, you're independent. Exactly.
It could literally be called anything. I mean, I'm looking at a notebook in front of me. Be called DJ Notebook. Because I guarantee if you blow up and you have a hit, nobody's going to be thinking that's a stupid name in 2 years. They'll be going, oh yeah, that Notebook guy, he writes some banging tech trance. It just all loses context.
Oh, that's just triggered back a memory back when I was about 12 years old. For fun, a mate of mine would just put DJ in front of anything. So we would have the best laugh. You know, DJ, we were doing, I think, an engineering class or something. So, you know, DJ aeronautical engineering, DJ bedside table, and yeah, you get the point.
But the irony is you go on Twitter and probably most of those handles have been taken by aspiring artists.
That's it, exactly. It's so true. Exactly right. Now, on the topic of different styles, man, you're best known for just being free with the harder styles. You're not afraid to spice up the tempo range, and not even just with the harder styles, you know, a bit of drum and bass. You're not afraid to experiment with different genres and styles. So I've got a question from another fan. His name is Jacob G. And he goes, Kutski, what's your take on mixing different styles in a set? Do you have some kind of structure or organization in mind, or do you just go with the flow?
Yeah, I mean, just to go a step before Jacob's question there, it's kind of what I like to do is I like to work with playlists a lot. And for those, you know, that don't know anything about DJ, maybe you were tuned in, it's kind of like what I do is in a program called Record Box, I'll create a list of music. So when I get to a club, it's like I can put my USB stick or my SD card and it'll load up that particular playlist. So I like to create a playlist for every gig that I'm going to play. And now I'd strictly say I don't really like the idea of DJing when you go with a fixed playlist of like 15 tracks and then you go there and you play them all in that order. That's not really my style. The way that I like to work with them is more like, say I'm playing an hour set, I'll make a playlist of 100 tracks in some kind of rough structural order, and then the tracks that I'm picking for it, obviously I've played a lot of clubs around the world, I know different countries, I know different clubs that I've played there before, what type of music works, so the playlists kind of aim to what I think will be useful for that gig. So, you know, if I'm playing a club that I know is quite a commercial club, then I can create a playlist and throw a lot of bootleggy stuff in there, cause, you know, just for easy access. So I know that that's what I'm going to need. And then say I play that gig, that goes well. And then, you know, kind of 6 months down the line, I'm playing a gig in Berlin. And I think that it's going to be a super underground gig, you know, where I'm going to have to really, you know, kind of play credible, deep, you know, cutting edge stuff. So I've sorted my playlist of what I think is going to work there. Gets to the club, and the guy before me is playing tech house remixes of Rihanna, and it's going off. I'm thinking, right, so me playing a really cool underground techie raw set, you know, with like, you know, kind of like all new promos and stuff, it's like it's not going to be that type of crowd. So that playlist that I've made, I ain't sticking to that playlist, or I'm going to drop like go down like a cold cup of sick. Like it's not going to be, nobody's going to be enjoying it. And so then it's like I said, that I've played all these gigs before. Then in my mind it goes, remember that commercial club that I played 6 months ago? So then I can jump back to that playlist. And then I'll start with some more accessible stuff to keep the crowd on my side from the beginning. And if things are going well, maybe, you know, I'm getting 30 minutes into the set, and then maybe maybe I can start teasing some of the more underground stuff. So then I jump back to that playlist that I'd made for the gig that I thought was going to work, and maybe drop a few things. And then maybe that goes off even more, and I can move in that direction then and take the crowd on a journey. Or maybe it's like, you notice that the back of the club thins out a little bit. People are going for a smoking break. People are going to get a drink, and you think you're not really into this underground stuff. So maybe play a couple more just to let the mood settle down, then jump back to more commercial stuff, pick the energy back up, get the dance floors busy again. And it's like, you know, that's the psychology of DJing, which is kind of a lost art now, because so much of DJing now, a lot of DJing, and this isn't me throwing shade, this is like, you know, it's like a compliment really. A lot of DJs are absolutely amazing producers, and then going to play DJ sets is like going to play a concert. So the crowd that come to see them are going to see them play 12 of their own tracks. That's what they're going to see. It's like the live performance of it. But then the DJ psychology and the dance floor psychology is not really applicable there. But like for me, it's like, I'm not the most prolific producer. So, and I play in a lot of territories that it's like, I'd like to think I'm kind of on the cutting edge, where I'm playing in areas where people are like, whoa, man, what are you doing playing there? I didn't know there was a scene there. And it's like, well, I didn't either. Let's go and find out. But at the same time is, everybody that's paid money to go into the club, even if you don't know who I am or anything, it's like, I want you to have a good night. And I'm not going to sell my soul and start playing a completely different set, than the style of music that I'm into. But, I've got a wide range of music within my arsenal that I like. So I'd like to be able to go into clubs, and within my palette of music, I think that I can get most people on board with the harder styles of dance music. And that's kind of, that's why, I pay a lot of attention to the psychological side of DJing and, kind of like dance floor psychology.
And that's, I feel, what helps you and your sets to stand out so much, Kutski. Just the fact that you put in that extra attention to detail, and you can really hear it in your podcast as well. And on that note, congratulations, man, on 400 episodes. It's such a huge achievement, so much dedication. Thank you for delivering such a great mix and podcast every time. I love Sample Mania, by the way. You're also educating people on the history in the past of the sample.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's one of my favorite features, because I've always kind of had like this obsessive fascination with sampling, because a lot of people see it as like, especially in the hardstyle scene, sampling seen as kind of quite an evil, and I think, any casual fans of the music, it's like they'll all, the thing that everybody gravitates to is, kind of, oh, so-and-so sampled so-and-so's kick, and you just hear that, every couple of years it'll be a so-and-so sampled this or so-and-so took that, and it's like, and so-and-so used a bit of, and it's all to do with sampling kicks, which seems to be the cardinal sin. And it's funny because obviously it's like, the motherland of hardstyle is like Holland, and it's like, and the Dutch guys, they're not into sampling kicks at all. That's kind of like the golden egg of hardstyle, and that's your thing that you craft. But and obviously it's like, because I'm involved in that scene, it's like, I absolutely have to respect, kind of like, the rules that you're playing within. But from my perspective in the UK, we just used to sample anything. It's like the rule used to be, if it was left clean on a track so you could sample it, it was fair game. And that's why it's like kind of the whole sampling culture kind of fascinates me a little bit. It's like I always joke with, I'm good friends with Rick Gecko, and it's like I always joke with him, I'm like, why can't you sample kicks in hardstyle? And it's like, and I'm partly doing it just to prod him. And it's like, yeah, you can't. He's like, you can't do it though, man, because it's like, because that's the thing. And it's like, it takes so long to learn the craft to be able to do it. And it's like, it's the cardinal sin with it. And he was like saying, and I was like, yeah, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, not so much now, but definitely back in the day when it was still not the done thing to sample kick drums, it's okay to sample rap samples from another track.
Couldn't agree more.
And I'm like, but then rappers have spent time to learn their craft, to learn the delivery. They've wrote them lyrics, they've recorded it, and it's like, and you're just jacking that. That's okay, but if someone jacks your kick,
that's
kind of, then that's not on. And it's like, and for me, that blows my mind. I'm like, who wrote this rule book? Like, where is it? Where's it written in the thing? And it's like, it's so funny. Like, we laugh about it, obviously it's like, kind of, we're having banter and we're joking about it there. But it's kind of, it's true that there is, like, I do feel like, kind of that there is boundaries for what's acceptable for sampling and what's not. But the interesting thing is everybody's view of it's completely different.
Very true.
Like, it's like, we'd say like, that it's okay to take somebody's melody and just change a few notes, and that's acceptable. And it's like, or it's acceptable to get somebody to re-sing a vocal, but not to sample it. And it's like, it's just so weird, because it's like, there's this weird built-in ethic in all styles of music, kind of like that other people think what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And it's just fascinating where that line goes. And that's why I think the Sample Mania feature is really interesting, because I think it's nice to know, nobody likes to admit it, but, whenever I'm working on a new track, I mean, I'm constantly dragging in 3 or 4 tracks of other artists that I really like, and their tracks are at the top of the project. So when I get stuck with mine, I can reference what other people are doing. And I sometimes feel that that's, kind of like my inferiority. And then when I speak to other people that I really, kind of really love and really, kind of like love what they do, and then see that they work in exactly the same way. And how other people listen to other people's melody and all this. And it's like, I just think it's just the creative process. No one creates anything without outside influence. And whether that's just like you've just heard a piece of classical music which has inspired you to make a hard style, you've taken very little from that, it's just a bit of inspiration, or whether you've changed a few notes on the melody or sampled somebody's kick, and there's this whole grey spectrum in between of it, and everybody draws their line. at a different place among it. And yeah, I just find it's like, again, it's back to the, kind of the psychology. Maybe I overthink things too much,
No,
but
yeah,
I find it really fascinating.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I'm actually really glad that you've brought that up. And, I hope that people also take a lot of this on as maybe even tips for your own production. I have a lot of people that come up to me and they feel quite limited and restricted by this, rule book. And no, to me, music is art. Everyone should just be free to enjoy their art, put their passion out there. And but, everyone's got opinions and that's the world we live in.
Yeah, and that's the fun thing.
Yeah, exactly right. Anyways, moving on. Tell me more about your production-wise. Are you writing anything new for 2020? Do you have some big plans coming up? Tell me about what's the future of Kutski.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that, like, obviously I've had quite a diverse career. Like, I got into the industry as a DJ, and then, I'd started to learn music production, and I was getting to the point where it's, kind of like, I was writing my own stuff that was like, like of playable quality, like in the early 2000s. And then I had the opportunity to join the BBC for like to do the Radio 1 show, which was like, it was like, untrodden ground. Nobody done anything like this. And it was an amazing opportunity, but it was basically a full-time job as well. So it's, kind of like, so when I was like working down there, I had time to go touring as an artist, DJing on weekends. And then, most of my week was taken up, doing radio production, planning the show, booking guests, all the stuff that went involved with that. And I was living in the north of England, the BBC's down south. So, there was a lot of travel involved with it, which basically I kind of like, I threw myself all in on that, and production took a real backseat for me. And a lot of the stuff that I did for probably like, the 10 years that I was with the BBC, a lot of it was just collaborations, where I'd have ideas and I'd sketch down ideas, but I'd never really get any further than that. And then obviously friends with a lot of people in the scene, you'd go and see them, you'd hang out in the studio, and, then we would shape my concept into a track, which ended up being a collaboration. Cool. And kind of so I'd worked a lot like that. And then obviously when I started moving away from the BBC, I'd set up the Keeping the Rave Alive brand, and that was supposed to just be the podcast, but then that turned into all the other the full-blown brand that Keeping the Rave Alive turned into. And then there's obviously a lot more business stuff involved in that. And it was really only probably about like 3 years ago that it's like I really thought to myself, it's like I need to get back into the studio and get into writing, kind of more music on my own. And obviously, production had moved on so much from then. I'd still kind of kept my hand in when I've been working with other people, but it's, the majority of the, the heavy lifting, like the production side of it, the engineering, that was always being done by the people that I was working with in the studio. So I kind of made a conscious effort that it's like, like I want my career to be a bunch of different chapters, and I think that production is definitely a chapter that I want to kind of like to be a lot stronger than it has been in the past. So I've started working again, more focused in the studio, like at getting there. And I think over the last 12, 18 months and stuff, it's like I've had a bunch of solo tracks released and stuff, which I've like this is another thing. It's like if we're going to touch on the ghost production thing, is I've never been ghost produced. I always write my own music, but I always get help at the final stage from people that I know. Like
we all do. I think a lot of people do. Hey.
And it's like, and I think a lot of people don't like to admit that, because I know in the scene, obviously not mentioning any names, lots and lots of people work in this same way, but nobody really wants to talk about it because they don't want to be branded as, oh, I didn't know he didn't write his own music. And it's like, oh, I didn't know he had a ghost producer, like where they think that you either sit in the studio and write your music from beginning to end yourself, or they think that somebody does it for you. Well, I mean, the process that I work with is I write the music, and then I'm always bouncing it off people. Like one of my best friends is Jordan Suckley, who's a tech trance producer, and I'm always sending him clips over and going, I like it, but there's something not quite right about the melody. And he'll be like, yo, try changing these notes here or move that up there. And I'm like, that's it, it's clicked. So it's like, and I think a lot of people bounce off, other people with ideas and stuff like that. But I'll primarily get to the finish line on my own, but the production quality is never that good. So I always get it mixed and mastered by somebody else at the end. And then got a lot of like two people I just shout out. It's like I work a lot with Crystal Mad, who's a raw style producer from the UK, and Danny BPM from Spain, who are both really good friends of mine. And it's like, and I'll pay them to, get the final products over the line at the end, because it's like, yeah, because I want my music to sound as good as possible. And it's that last little bit of investment. And obviously, I'd like to think that each track that I'm doing, I'm getting closer and closer to the finish line, myself. But it's like a lot of people kind of, they don't really want to talk about this because they don't want to be branded as a ghost produced act. But it's like, I'd like to think now that, if you listen to any of my collaborations with anybody over the last 18 months and you listen to my solo tracks, that there's definitely a sound now that you can tell that that's because I'm sitting here every day writing my own music. But it's just the final, step at the end. I mean, it's weird because I think because people in dance music are so talented that it kind of like the bar gets set really high. Because if you think of like really credible bands that write their own music, but when they actually record an album, they've got an engineer in the studio that's EQing everything and setting up the mics properly and doing the mix down at the end. Even though the band has written and performed the music themselves, there's an engineer that's done it. And that's how it is in every other music scene. But just because there's so many incredibly talented people in dance music that can also write their music, engineer their music, produce it, finalize it, master it, and they're doing everything themselves, the bar has been set at that gold standard. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily work that way. A lot of people do work in a similar way to me, or even, like obviously there is that full range from like, people that are just, they have a contract with a company where half the fee goes to a producer that writes the music for them, and then it's like right through to the other end. I'd like to think I'm further along the other spectrum where it's like, I'm writing the tracks myself and I'm getting them mixed and mastered at the end. But then there's that whole spectrum in between, and it doesn't make anybody less of an artist, but I just think it'd be more fun if people could be open and weren't so afraid to talk about it.
Musical freedom.
I kind of realised that I don't really kind of like care at this point. Like, like I like to be as much of an open book. And it's like the other thing that I feel like guilty turning around and saying like, kind of like, oh, check out this track that I made entirely on my own. And it's like, and even like, Danny and Matt, that's like I said, I work with stuff, and they're like, man, you are writing your own music and stuff, and you're doing all of this. But it's like I still kind of need to say when people are like, oh man, that new track's really good, and I always feel the need to say, cheers. Matt did the mix down on it. Matt did the mix and master and helped me with a kick and stuff. Like, and it's like I feel the need to put that forward a little bit. Yeah, and it's kind of like because I don't want to take any fake praise.
Good on you, man.
Yeah, I just think it's not from kind of some kind of like high and mighty noble thing, but I think it'd be nice if everyone could talk like that. And I know a few people have like kind of a few people have been more honest and stuff. And I think when people come out and are honest with our work, people are just like, yeah, cool. Fair enough.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's very true. And yeah, the people that are honest about it, they're up front. Once they've broken, I guess, that tension, it's like, oh, okay, no big deal anymore. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I was only half reading it and I meant to go back and read it again. But obviously, like, one of the most prolific producers in hardstyle, The Prophet, and he was saying now he's later in his career and he's got a lot of business and a lot of other stuff going on that he gets, help with the production. And it's like, no one's going to question whether The Prophet can produce tracks. I mean, the guy's an absolute 100% legend. But it was just nice how he was like, kind of came out. That was it was almost like a motivational boost for me. So I'm like, oh, so other people are kind of, other people are working in a similar way, because it's such a taboo thing that nobody wants to talk about. And I'm walking around blabbermouth all the time going, yeah, I'm getting all these people to help me do this thing. And I think I'm the only one. And then it's secretly kind of like there's a lot of other people that are in that same boat. And I think it'd be nice if, I always think, because obviously it's like one of my best friends is Sam, Audio Freak. And it's like, if you want to talk about giving yourself like a check on how good you really are, like spend any time in the studio with Sam, because that guy is an absolute genius. Like there's nothing that guy can't do. And whenever I start to think to myself, it's like, I'm getting quite good at this production game. It's like I just have to chat with Sam for 10 minutes and go, no, there's still a long way to go and stuff. But it's like I said, not everybody can be Sam. Like Sam's like literally one in a million. So
yeah. I think we can all relate to that. Yeah, especially once you've done a new track, you're so proud of yourself. Listen to someone else, just
Yeah, it's like whenever I finish a new track and I'm happy with it, it's like I'll just text Sam and say, "Don't send me anything for 2 weeks, man. I don't want to lose the buzz."
Yeah, I know this feels totally. Now, on the topic of, I guess, artists these days, tell me, do you find that music has become more of a business? Tell me, what do you think people need to do to stay relevant in this current day and age?
Oof, it's a tough one. It's something that everybody's battling with. I mean, it's like the way that I got into the industry was like, again, like super passionate. And I used to love DJing, and I created these awesome mixtapes like not to be, kind of like most people just put together a mix, but I'd plan it out where the mixes were going to be really interesting. The tracks were really cool. It took you on a journey. It had all scratching. This was all done like, with vinyl when you couldn't like, edit anything afterwards. It was like, it had to be one take, and I'd get these right. And then it's like, I'd record it to a tape. I'd duplicate the tape and I'd send it out, and I'd impress everybody with my DJ skills. I was calling phone numbers on the back of the flyer to get addresses to send tapes to. That could not be less relevant now. It's just that's not going to break. And that's how I broke through. Ain't working anymore. No. Now it's like literally the most powerful tool that you can have in your arsenal, and people roll their eyes at it and stuff. And it's like, and I hate doing it just like everybody else does. It is the most important thing is social media now. And it's just kind of, it absolutely is. And I'd say like, for anybody, if you're aspiring to, kind of like break, through or something, it's production and social media. They're the two things that you need. And it's like, and it is like sometimes, like I said, because I come from the UK scene, and the UK scene has always been a bit more spit and sawdust, like rough around the edges. Like most people that got into the scene in the UK, there were people that went out partying with their friends, but they also had like a big mouth on them and were passionate. And then they kind of like muscled their way into the industry. And it's like, kind of like, somebody that was just like going to parties, and then they'd be like saying to the promoter, yeah, man, I can sell tickets for you and put a bus on there if I can warm up at your next set. And that was a very UK way of getting into the scene. That was like, how it worked. So there was no big professional business models that went with anything. Whereas I think like in Europe, they took it a lot more seriously, where it's like, you look at, kind of like it was treated much more like a business from the start. And it's like, you can look at it and say it's a little bit more heartless and a little bit more clinical, and everything's more about, what can make money and what's the best investments, rather than it's all about the music, man. But then you look at the scale of the parties in the UK versus the scale of the parties in Holland, for example. It's like you can't do Climax with the blagging mentality that we grew up with in the UK, where, we'd be going into a bar going, yeah, like I said, when I first started, it was, we were getting into a bar on a Sunday night because we were telling the guy, hey, let's come down and play some records. And it's like, and we'll bring more people. But it's like, kind of that, whereas you can imagine if you sat down with a bunch of people in an office and said, okay, let's have a look at the business models for all these other club events and how can we build something? That's how you end up with the big events. So it swings and roundabouts. I mean, sometimes when you see like, you want to be careful with that like monopolistic mentality, because there's a reason why monopolies in industry are like, kind of, they're not tolerated, because in the end, it's not good for anybody. So you have to be careful with that side of it. And then there is the side of, if you're running a big party and you also run a record label and you also run an agency, then it's kind of, you've got the temptation to say, well, if we run an event, let's only book artists from our agency, because then it's a showcase for our roster, which means that they might get more bookings. They're also on our agency, so we'll get a cut. We don't have to pay another agent any money for working with it, and we'll take the percentage inside the artist's thing. And then the same goes with the record label. It's like, well, why would we sign music from somebody that's outside? Because if that blows up to be a big hit, it's like then that artist is going to get popular and we don't benefit from their success. So then you end up with this mentality that it's kind of dangerous, that if you get that it'll put people off the scene, and people will just see these false walls where it's like, well, unless you commit in, then it's like, then you're just going to get doors unfairly closed on you. And then people go, well, actually, I like techno too. And they'll make a techno track and then they blow up, and then that's another great artist left the scene. So that's the downside of it, that you have to be careful of, that you don't end up running a monopoly that alienates people that aren't in your camp, but your camp is the scene. But at the same time, is if you don't treat it like a professional business, you're never going to be able to turn over enough profit to put on these big super parties, and the scene will implode because there's no money for anybody to make a career out of it. So it's like, not to get too political with it, but it's almost like, kind of capitalism versus communism type, kind of mentality with it, where it's like, if you go too far extreme on either one way, it's not going to work out so well. But, kind of, if there's, as long as the balance is kept there. So yeah, the industry is like, kind of, it's an interesting one, especially for me, because it's almost like I said, with the mentality of sampling in the past, that we come from a lot more like rough around the edges. I'm sure it'll be all right. Screw it. We'll wing it. I'll figure it out. Whereas it's like, kind of like, across the pond in Europe, it's a lot more structured and business orientated, which is, and I think both have their, charm, but they both have the dangers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Alrighty, John. Well, I'm coming towards the end of the show. I just have a little question for you. What are you playing these days, man? Any games?
I am at the moment. It's a really unfortunate hole that I fell down to. There was a game that I played and I lost far too many hours to it called Stardew Valley, where you're basically a little farmer and you run your little farm, and it's very pixel art, looks like old Nintendo games,
cool.
And you just run your own farm. And it's like, and I played that to death, and I'd finally got it out of my system. And then somebody on Twitter last week messaged me and said, "Have you heard of Graveguard Keeper?" And I'm like, "Nah." And he goes, "It's Stardew Valley, but you get to run your own graveyard."
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay, right." Alarm bells are ringing now. And then it's like, so I watched the trailer of it, and it's like, so you basically running your own graveyard, as the name suggests, but then you can choose like your ethics on it as well. Like, so when you're doing the autopsies on the body, it's like kind of you can keep the meat from it, and maybe you want to save money when you're making burgers for the witch burning festival.
Wow,
maybe you could
far out.
But you've got that ethical choice of whether you want to make it, and sometimes you'll get a bad body that'll like reduce the quality of your graveyard.
Right.
So do you bury that body and reduce it, or do you just walk down to the river and chuck it in? And it's
an interesting concept, right?
It really is, and it's one of them that it's like straight away. It's turned out to be the most expensive game ever, because the game itself only cost, I think it was like £17 or something like that. So I started it. Then my girlfriend saw it, and then since she saw it, she started playing it, and I've hardly seen my like Nintendo Switch since it. So I had to go and buy her an early Christmas present the other day, give her a new Switch so I could get mine back to carry on playing this. So it's completely Graveyard Keeper has taken over our house at the moment.
Right. That's great.
That game's a time sink, trust me.
That's all right, man. Sometimes we need to get away a bit, hey, and just escape to our games. Now, I know you're a Legend of Zelda fan. Have you played the remake of Link's Awakening?
I have, yes. I played that, a couple of months back. That was a really fun game, and I'd never played it before. I'd never played the Game Boy version of it.
Me neither, yeah. I've been meaning to pick up the new one. How would you give it out of 10, man?
I would give it a solid 8.5. I really liked it. It was a charming game,
cool.
And it wasn't too long. A lot of people were complaining. A lot of people were saying, kind of like, they shouldn't charge full price for a game like that. But sometimes when you're playing a game, I don't like it when I've dropped off a game. When I kind of get so far into it and then I kind of lose interest, and then you don't play it, then you start playing something else. You never go back, and I never look back fondly on it. Whereas it's like with that new Zelda game, just as I'd kind of got my fill of it, it was winding up, and I wanted to see the end of it, and I finished it, and I was like, I enjoyed that. Perfect length. I still spent about 30 hours on it. And like, when you think if a game costs, I don't know, say most expensive, a game costs like, I don't know, for you guys, what is it, $60, something like that, 60, 70 Australian?
Yeah, it's about the average, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and then if you think, like, say with that Zelda, so you get 35 hours out of it, and then, you work out per hour how much you paid to be entertained by that, and then you work that out versus how much to go to the cinema or something. I don't know. It's funny.
You try to justify it.
Yeah, but this is the argument that goes through my head all the time. It's like when I come back, I say to my girlfriend, I say, "Listen, I know we bought a load of new games last week, but I've got this. But think about all the hours of entertainment we'll get."
That's great, man. I love the reasoning behind that. That's perfect. Alrighty, John. Well, I'm finishing up the show. I would love you as the guest to ask the audience a question. Now, it can be any question at all. It can be video game related, can be industry related, something that you're curious to know from the audience.
Industry related, one of the things that's been playing on my mind for a little while now is I'm really interested in radio. Obviously, that comes across, in my history working with the BBC and stuff like that. And if you haven't guessed by this interview, I like the sound of my own voice. I like talking. So I've been toying with the idea. And obviously, podcasts are like such a big thing at the moment, just generally speaking across everything. And I've wanted to kind of, similar to, kind of like what you're doing here with investigating how people, kind of like got into the industry. So it's a music related podcast with artists, but it's more about music. Like, we're talking, we're not listening to music, And I've wondered, would you be interested in more like spoken word podcasts from people in the industry, but also talking about things that are not music related? I mean, we've just had a good talk about video games there. There's so many people like, DJs in there, kind of in the industry that are really into video games that I talk to all the time about it. And I think to myself, that'd make a really cool, interesting listen to people. But then I'm thinking, well, would they be interested or not? So that's my question is, would you be interested in hearing your favorite artists in the hard dance music scene talk about things that they're like outside of it? Like, would you be interested in a video game podcast with hardcore and hardstyle DJs?
Right. What a great question. I can say for me personally, I would, man.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah,
like it.
totally.
I like it.
Even you know what? If you guys can have a Twitch stream, even I'm sure everyone would love to just see you guys having antics and whatnot, sitting in front of a TV screen, playing a game, sharing a controller. Yeah, I'm sure it'd be a
I mean,
great time.
this was something when the original Destiny came out. Me and Gamma used to joke about it back in the day. How we wanted to create our own like Twitch hangout where we just go online and talk shit and just pot around on Destiny and just like.
Right.
But it was one of the things that we never got around to doing. And so yeah, that was that kind of like the birth around the concept. I mean, that was what 3 years ago we were talking about that, and it's like it's been on my mind ever since about creating something that would be like a video game related show, but hosted by hard dance DJs. I think it'd be interesting.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much, John, for being here today. Appreciate your time. Everyone, this has been DJ Mixmaster, John Walker, better known as Kutski. Check out his podcast. Please, you will enjoy it. I guarantee you. John, take care, man. You have a great day.
Thanks very much.
Cheers for tuning in to another episode, guys. Stay tuned for the next one where I talk to Dave PSI, also known as the head of Team Rocket Entertainment. We discuss Sydney events, his origin story, his music production and DJing career, as well as we get to hear some of his stories about his time overseas.